Hello. Can you do next? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for waiting. We just had every consultant's nightmare happen to us. In the time it took us to, embarrassingly, drive from the rock gym over to here, the entire presentation evaporated. We closed the computer and we opened it back up, and somehow all the images were gone and everything. So luckily we had a version from 3 hours ago. So we just did 3 hours of work in the last 15 minutes. So you will have no idea if something isn't right. So I probably shouldn't have told you that, but I had to have a reason for making you all wait. So thank you for your patience and for not heckling us. All right, so any first timers in the room? Anybody who's is the first thing they've done in the Codeapalooza? I didn't think so. Perfect. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being frequent flyers. We are going to run through a presentation here, share some thoughts. This is the beginning of the process. This is the end of the Codeapalooza, but we're at the beginning still. So there will be things in here that we may have knocked out of the park, and there may be some things in here that we've struck out on. And so that's why we do this. We'll do a Q&A at the end and just open it up for discussion. You can tell us, if we goofed on something. And also, throughout the past several days, we've talked a lot. We've had lots of meetings and things, and we've heard a lot of things. So some of those things, hopefully most of those things are reflected here in the presentation, but there'll probably be some things that aren't in here yet. So if you don't see something in here that we talked about, don't fret and think that we've left it out on purpose, like, oh, we didn't think that was a good idea or whatever. It just may have to come out because we've got pages and pages and pages of notes. So without further ado, next. So we talked about this at the beginning, comprehensive and high-level vision document for your future. Next, and I kind of glossed over this slide. And it occurred to me about 45 minutes ago how important what's on this slide is, actually. So I want to draw your attention to a few things. These are the goals from your comprehensive plan. And so it talks about guiding growth intentionally and proactively, and we've heard a lot about guiding growth this week. It talks about having that clear, unified community vision. We have totally come up with a clear, unified community vision. Y'all are all on the same page. So thank goodness for Codeapalooza, right? This is so modernize the ordinance and clarity, predictability. Yes, that will come. Strengthen the downtown as the true heart of the community. And we've heard a lot about downtown and got to experience it. But we also heard a lot of people say, this isn't all about downtown. Don't just focus on downtown. And so we've tried to honor that, even though it's tempting because your downtown has so much potential. It's so charming. It's just ready to, have some neat things happen there. And I've gotten to meet with business owners and people from the DDA and to see how hard people are working to try to really make that the gym that it wants to be. So the next one is expand housing options / managed density. And then I'm going to read the fine print on this one because this is probably one of the most talked about topics throughout this whole Codeapalooza. Address the housing shortage for young families, first-time buyers, seniors. Support missing middle housing, and if you're not up to on your planning jargon, so missing middle housing is sort of the mid-scale size-wise and mid-price housing option. So the idea with missing middle is people started to identify, so many cities have been focusing on large single family zoning and multifamily, large multifamily zoning. And so you get these huge apartment complexes and then you get lots of subdivisions of big houses, and all of a sudden then they're finding there's this missing middle type of housing. And so, you end up with I was talking about, teachers and firemen and, people in the planning department or whatever can't end up living in the town that they're serving, as an example. Or younger people can't move back to town when they want to and whatever. So then, and then the last one says, recognize strong concerns regarding high density and large apartment complexes. And we heard you loud and clear throughout this week that there is not an appetite for large apartment complexes. That is not something that you all seem to be comfortable with. If there was one thing that I could say we probably heard unanimously, large suburban style, garden style apartments are not what you want in your future, right? So we came to consensus on one thing, so that's good. And then the next topic is improve walkability, sidewalks, and connectivity. And so we heard a lot about that. We had a meeting about this topic yesterday, in fact. And so talking about reducing car dependency and making the place more walkable. And we talked about during that meeting that walkable doesn't just mean having places to walk, like sidewalks. It means having a place you want to walk to or walk through, as opposed to just for exercise or because you have to because you don't have a car. So anyway, I thought those were important, and we've talked about that second to last one, the housing options one, not in the context of your comprehensive plan. We just talked about it in terms of, hey, what does everybody think about this? And so it was interesting to see specifically, and kind of remember that it talks about it very directly. Next slide. So what zoning is, so we talked about, zoning is grouping land into different categories. Typically it's based on uses. That's not where we're heading these days. That's sort of the older way of thinking about it. And then it doesn't cause things to be built. It talks about what you can and can't do with the property. Next. So here's something that came up a lot this week, is understanding what zoning is not, right? And so as we look at the zoning ordinance, it isn't about, we don't have traffic calming in there, traffic laws, property maintenance. We heard tons about maintenance, regulations for signs, stream buffers, environmental features, business licenses, permits, HOA rules, noise ordinances, deed restrictions, building codes, fire codes. And another one we heard a lot about was enforcement. A lot of the concerns people brought to us had to do with like, oh, this is happening, that's happening. I was like, well, why is that happening? And don't you have a rule for that? Well, yes, we do. Oh, okay. Well, you already have a rule for it. So, if it's in the zoning, that'll continue on. But when it comes to enforcement, that's just an enforcement thing, not a zoning ordinance thing. So next. So we went through this process, and we'll go quickly here. So opening presentation, mapping workshop. You guys did a great job. Next, being planners for the night. We had our topical meetings. Yes, people always like to see themselves on these things, so smile, you're on candid camera. We had our open studio, and so that's when people could just drop in at their convenience in case they missed a meeting or had a big idea or something, and people took good advantage of that time. Next. So what we've heard, grow with intention, become a destination rather than a pass-through. You guys are getting tons of traffic. We hear about that, and your population is quite small compared to the number of trips that are going down your highways, which tells me that it's not you that's being the traffic. Higher quality design, stronger connectivity, a true walkable downtown, clear standards and consistency, and establishing identity that's regionally competitive. We talked about how, if it weren't for the welcome to Loganville sign, how would you know you were in Loganville or that you've left? And so that's not unusual, like that's nearly every other place around, but is that enough for you guys? Like, might we know we're in Loganville because, man, look at this place. This is something special here, right? Next. So we took all the dots you guys put on the maps, and here's the places you loved, all the green dots, the places that you saw opportunities, and then places that need improvement, and there were lots of red dots. And so lots of times the red and the blue overlap, so needs improvement and opportunity. And so we looked at these and just been, hearing as people came in and talked to us as well, it helped us identify some areas to look at more specifically, because one of the things that you'll see in a minute is we draw specific plans for areas, right? Not to make a proposal, not to say here's what should happen here. It's really irrelevant. We could have picked any site. What we're trying to find is a site that has the attributes of, and a lot of times syncs up with the places you guys marked. And we say, okay, well, if you take the things that you all have been saying that you're asking for and make those things happen, what might it yield? Like what could a development be like if that happened? And so we have some examples that we'll show you, and then we can talk about those, and you go like, oh, that's so cool, I never thought of that, or oh, that seems like a bit much for us. But in no case are we suggesting that this is what should happen on this property or that property or the other property. I mean, you can, if somebody thinks it's a great idea and the property owner is inspired by it, which happens a lot, and then, and the zoning syncs up with it once we adjust the zoning ordinance, and hopefully things do come from it, but we draw it as a way to illustrate things. Next. So coding for character. So we'll be incorporating things like what we call frontage types, and the frontage is the way the building addresses the street, sort of the first level, and sort of common sense in some cases, and there's a common yard, a porch, a shop front, a stoop, and in certain areas, certain frontage types don't make sense, right? So if you're out in the rural area, shop front probably doesn't make sense as a frontage type, but a common yard or a porch or something like that does. And so each of the different frontage types that we'll have in there will be coded to one of the zoning districts that we have. And so what you'll start to see in these next series of slides, is it's a bit more nuanced and sophisticated than just separating one use from the next, right? So these are just some pictures. So we'll be talking about civic space types as well. So, and mind you, the example photographs in here are not intended to propose that you guys need to be, 12 stories like the bottom right-hand image there. It's look at the civic space in the foreground. And the idea is that instead of just saying you have to have a certain percentage of open space in your development, assuming that is something that you'll want, what type of open space? So we actually are specific about it. Is it pocket parks? Is it plazas? And obviously, same thing. Is a plaza appropriate on a farm? Probably not. It's appropriate in a downtown area? It is, right? And so those are, again, all calibrated to the different types of zoning districts. So we'll talk about building types as well. And so, these are just a few examples. So, we'll get into that. Go back. Oh, wait, no, we go into these in more detail in a second. So, all right, carry on. So single-family detached house does not need much explanation, but what you'll notice in this set of images is, like for instance, the top middle, those are kind of small little cottages, right? But the one just to the right of them is a pretty large house on a large lot. And so, but they're all single-family detached homes. And so a building type that we'd find would be a house. But the lot sizes can vary, and so we'll get into those based on the districts. Next. Duplexes. Here's some examples of duplexes, and one of the things that we heard is throughout the week is if someone was able to wrap their mind around or accept something besides just a single-family detached house, what seemed to be the trend that would make it palatable is if it's appeared to be like a single-family detached house, right? And so these are kind of neat examples where they fit right into the streetscape. If you weren't paying close attention and noticed that they had two doors on them, you would think it was just a single-family house. And so it's kind of a way to get a little bit more density, a little bit more efficiency, but not feel like you're changing the character and packing everything in. Next. So here we have single-family detached, even though it says attached. No, sorry, attached. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I shouldn't question Anna. My bad. Still shaking off that technical difficulty here. So single-family attached, as the slide says. And so we refer to these as row houses. And in places where the term hasn't been totally corrupted, we call them townhouses sometimes, but that is not a word we will use here because we've seen the townhouses you get, and we've heard how you feel about them. And I'll show you in a minute. Sometimes the townhouses you get here, well, you'll notice none of these have the garage on the ground floor, right? And when you do have the garage on the ground floor in the townhouse, it looks like you're driving down an alley, not a street, right? And they don't fit in the streetscape, and they're not walkable, and all of that stuff. And while this might not be for everyone, this lifestyle, it's for some. And but if you're going to do it right, right? And that's going to be kind of the theme about this whole process, I think. Do it right, it's build better, because what we know is the higher you set your standards, the more you stick to your guns, the more selective you can be on who's building your future here, right? Instead of it just being, the standards are so low, it's so cheap and easy to build here, anybody's gonna do it, they're gonna, y'all are gonna get all the stuff that none of the other towns or nearby want, And so to that end though, you wanna make it easy for the things you want, right? So the level of difficulty should go down while the expectation goes up, because you're clear about what your expectations are. A developer or builder shouldn't have to sort of run the gauntlet and come out the other side with just by the skin of their teeth and having lost a pound of flesh on the way if they're doing what you want them to do. Normally, they're not. And so not you, sure, but most places beat them up as much as they can within the law, just because y'all know they're going to goof something up if even if you do beat them up, sometimes they still goof stuff up. So next, cottage court. This is one people always talk about these days, Sometimes they have tiny houses. These are some tiny house cottage courts, and they have a little pocket park inside, and it's seniors love these. You can kind of get your friends together, and they all live on you say, hey Elma, on the porch, and and they got the little community garden in the middle, and you go garden together and stuff, and when you're tired of talking to them, you go on inside and sit on your back porch, and so, but they're charming. They add a lot of, these are the places people take pictures of. They post on Instagram. Look at the little cottage courts in Loganville, So, next. Mansion flats. Mansion flats. Okay. So in these images, what you see here, in these fine-looking buildings, are multiple units. And we've talked about this a bit throughout the week. And, if you're going to have multifamily, as I said at the beginning, we know there's no appetite for big apartment complexes. And, one of the problems, as I identified in the opening presentation, is that the big apartment complexes are not only big themselves, but they're made up of gigantic buildings that could be anywhere and have no sort of architectural style to them. They're just monotonous, repeated, or whatever. And so in these units, like even this bottom right-hand unit that looks kind of big from the angle of the photograph, that's a 6-unit building. There's not any more than 6 units in there. And so each of these is sort of varying types. And the one on the top right is kind of interesting. It's a multifamily building, but it looks like even within that building, it looks like 2 different buildings. So it's kind of neat how that works. So anyway, as we go through this, and we found as we were looking at your zoning ordinance that you guys already have limited multifamily. You can't do a big, gigantic apartment complex here already, at least not the kind with the giant building. You can, what do you do? Up to 6 units, I think, is currently allowed. Now you can fill up a whole piece of property with those 6-unit buildings, I suppose, and so that gets a bit much unto itself. But at least you're already protected from the worst version of it. And so how do we take that one step further and make sure that if you're doing it, look at these. They're up to the sidewalk, they have landscaping, you literally, I think to the right of the one on the top right, there's a big single family house that's expensive, just fits right in the streetscape, and things are mixed. And I know these 2 on the bottom left have not multifamily buildings next to them. I think one of them has some townhouses on one side, one has, and then on the other side, single family. And so they're mixed in a lot of times, which is great because you don't notice that you have that many if you do. The problem is with anything, I don't know, single family may not be as much the case, but when you do the same thing over and over in an entire development, that's when it starts going like, ugh, it's just too much. Even a single family, if you repeat the same house over and over, if the architecture is nice and it's varied and they have a nice streetscape, single family, you can get by with just having all be single family. But the most interesting single family neighborhoods that you see these days are the ones that actually have a mix of different single family house sizes within it, which is kind of nice. So next. So live work, we've talked about this a little bit, and this is where you've got a shop on the ground floor, and the owner can live above their shop, or they can rent it out. Somebody can live above it, and these are nice because they kind of fit in. And then sometimes you'll see these mixed in where you can either have it be a townhouse or have commercial on the ground floor, and they kind of work together. And then each of these that you see are in new neighborhood centers, and then just outside of them, it transitions to single family of various types, and they're kind of all mixed in together. Next. And a mixed use building, and so this would be a bigger building that has the multifamily above. And we were looking at your downtown, right? And let's your most urban place, or let's call it urbane, right? In relative terms. It's all pretty much one story, except for the green building, I guess. And that used to be a one-story building. And it's cute. It's not that lively, we've heard. Sometimes it is when you have events and things, but for it to really be sort of long-lasting, it needs to be more, not 24-hour here, but you know what I mean, sort of more active all the time. But I was looking in the downtown overlay, and you've got 5 stories allowed. Is that right? Am I reading that right? Am I misremembering? 6 stories. There's 3 stories somewhere, like normally, and then there's like another thing where you can go 6 stories. 2 to 5. 2 to 5, special approval of 6. Okay. Whoa. 6 is a lot, right? I don't know how long, if y'all put a lot of thought into it being 6, or y'all just love that. But to me, to go from 1 story to 6 would be a bit jarring, probably. But having a 2-story minimum seems like that makes a lot of sense, because what I know y'all talked about this in the past, and sometimes because y'all have had lots of discussions about development in the past, some of the things that I'm going to say have their own energy that comes with them, right? And so when we talk about, typically, you say, well, we want people in a downtown area so they can go shop and eat and walk around, and people breed people, and they come, whatever. I know that in the past you guys have had that similar discussion, but the volume of people that might be proposed in that area has been of concern, right? And so if we think about having a 2-story minimum, then you would know you're at least getting a 2nd floor, hopefully, of people living above. But even if you added a 2nd floor to all of your downtown buildings right now, that's a handful of units, right? It's very few. But it's something, and they have the lights on at different times in the shops, and it makes it a bit more interesting being down there. So I don't know, we're just kind of thinking through. As I said, you guys asked us to not focus on downtown too much, but we didn't want to not think about it at all. And we wanted to be aware of what the current regulations say, so that we can know. Because one of the things that we kind of struggle with sometimes is, like we were working in the city of Charleston, I probably told you all this story before, and it was outside the downtown, and in an area called Johns Island, and people will drive around Johns Island with bumper stickers that say Johns Island Rural Forever, and they're fighting hard or whatever. And we get in and we're doing the zoning assessment of the current zoning, and they were zoned 27 units to the acre by right, and they thought that they were in this rural preserve. The only reason that nobody had done anything was the market just hadn't made it out there yet. And so they're sitting there with their pants around their ankles, just, thankfully nobody was coming and doing stuff. And so we said, well, hey city, what do we do? This is, when did y'all do that? Well, in the 80s, and we thought, and so we said, okay, if we change the zoning, and that could cause a problem for you. And so they're like, well, it's what you do. You got to do the right thing. We made a mistake then. We're going to change it. Come what may. And so there they had a lot of these grand live oak trees and all that. And, the units per acre calculation is, we talk about this sometimes on some of the other topics like lot size. nobody knows units per acre. That's an abstract concept, right? And so, you know, like if I showed you one of those multifamily mansion flats from a distance and you didn't realize that it was multifamily and asked you how many units per acre, you're like, well, 1, you know, and it's like, well, actually, no, that's 6. And so we don't think about it in terms like that. And so what we said was, well, what if you limited the height of buildings to no taller than the grand live oaks that you have down here? So they're not sticking up over the live oaks, and they're like, oh, that's a great idea. And so then, you know, that we didn't have to tinker with their density per se. And so we were, you know, they could kind of work their way through it. So we need to figure out the highest heights that I was just talking about aren't by right, right? So it's not like you'd be taking someone's rights away by doing it per se. So they still got to come ask you if they can do it. But that's something we need to think about together. Like, what do you really want to do in downtown as we go? So next. So we talked earlier about uses, and I've gotten the idea that we don't focus on uses so much. Uses are important, and we'll have a use table, and we've been looking at your uses and looking at ways to simplify it. Usually use tables are super bloated and have these unnecessary zones in them, and so we're going to get that all fixed up and cleaned up. But ultimately, if the character of the place is right, what happens inside the building is not nearly as important in most cases, right? There are obviously limits to that, and so we'll look at that together as we go. Next. And then we're going to put it all together in a way that is easy to use, right? So y'all will be able to look at it, digest it, it all makes sense, and tables and standards, and it's clear, because what we don't want you guys doing is having to design a project from up here with an applicant standing here, and they're coming and saying, here's what we hope to do, can we do it? We don't really like that. That's kind of ugly. Well, we didn't know what you wanted exactly because the standards weren't clear. Well, try again, And so we want to make sure that you have clear and objective standards that everyone can be on board with, and people will show up with plans that you love in the first place, and the process is not a huge burden, not only for the applicant, but for all of you, right? For all of you who are having to sit up here and make decisions about things, it takes a toll. It's hard to kind of struggle with every single development that happens, and so we want to try to sort that out for you guys, and get rid of the subjectivity and the need for y'all to exercise discretion on things. So next. Okay. Warning, warning, warning. I'm about to show some plans. Plans on land that we don't control. Plans on land that we aren't intending on these things happening on. We even went so far as to draw renderings of it, right? So it's going to be, it's going to look serious. It's going to look like we were really, really serious. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to explain the plans, and then I'm going to explain how zoning relates to those plans, because that's the real point of them. Sometimes I get so excited by the plan, I forget to do that. So if I don't do that, I need, Anna, can you just raise your hand and say, talk about zoning? All right, so Ingalls Shopping Center. There were dots on this place. We heard a lot about it. People called it out by name. We had thought we were hoping you guys were going to spot this area, because when we were looking around, we're like, wow, that's a big piece of land. And okay, so that said, we've talked about the idea of suburban retrofit, where you take these areas that are underutilized and overbuilt in parking typically. I don't know when the last time was that parking lot was full, but you probably don't remember, even if you've lived here your whole life, that it was ever full, right? So we look at that as an opportunity, right? And it's a place that typically people are not passionate about, even if you love Ingalls. They're not like, that is my favorite place. When everyone comes to town to visit me, I take them to Ingalls. We stand in the parking lot, we get our lawn chairs out, we do it upright in Loganville, right? And so these are easy, and the thing is too, they tend to be along major transportation corridors. And so they can be transformed. They can become actually an iconic kind of a place. And they can be places where, if you want, you can have some density, right? And so what I'm going to show you now is a transformation of what this could look like. Get on with it, right? Okay, so Anna, can you zoom in for me on the screen? Do you dare touch it? Okay, oh, yes, there we go. Okay, so the pink buildings in the back, that's Ingalls and Goodwill and the strip center that goes along with them. And there we go. So as you come in off the highway there, you've got mixed-use buildings in the sort of darker brick color, and then regular commercial buildings in the lighter red color, sort of like one story, kind of like you see out there now. And then you come in, and you come to this great civic space, sort of the neighborhood green, if you will, right? And then around it, we have some more mixed-use buildings. We've got a little side street that connects into the left and to the right, and so we've created some blocks within there. And we've got some, where's your cursor? Where'd it go? There we go. All right, so to the right there, some townhouses, some row houses, some attached single-family houses. And then on the other side of the street, to keep going there, we have some live-work buildings there. And what you'll notice is that we still got a boatload of parking, but that parking is actually internal within the block, like you would see in a historic place. The buildings are up to the street. You've got well-lit parking with trees and all of this stuff within the block, and little passages that go through, so you're not having to go all the way around all the time. So you still get the parking. And then we've even shown along the front of the Goodwill strip, we've sort of dashed in where one day maybe Goodwill doesn't need quite so many square feet or whatever. You can actually do a little what we call a liner building. So you kind of carve off a bit of the front and have a nice storefront on it. Still have the stuff in the back, the normal strip mall stuff. And you've got a streetscape there. And so this place is transformed. So you could have on top of those mixed use buildings, you could have a few, a story or two of residential or office or whatever. But it creates a vibe there. It creates a place where people want to go. It totally transforms this, but you still got your Ingalls. Ingalls still has parking. And some, you go like, oh, well, so again, here's why it's not real, right? I have no idea how many parking spaces are here. I don't know how many parking spaces Ingalls needs, right? And so what would happen is if somebody decided to do something like this one day, they would have a parking study. They would figure out how much parking is necessary. You go like, oh, well, actually we can't have the mid-block streets there. We need more parking or whatever. You just, that all gets sorted out. But what you can see in this related to zoning is the different building types that we'll talk about, the setbacks, so in a more urbane environment, these buildings are pulled up to the street. You would have different frontage types that we talked about would be required. So you'd have storefronts in some of these areas that would be required, and stoops and like where the row houses are. And then you would have standards for the height. So how many stories you could go up. And so, you kind of go through that. So let me look at some renderings here. So, whoa, don't give it away. There we go. Okay. So here it is today, right, in all of its glory. And we did take one liberty. The little guy there, I don't know what that is on the upper right, that out parcel out front.
Title Max.
What is it? Title Max. Okay. Well, Title Max is now in a proper mixed-use building. It's beautiful. It's going to on the ground floor. You go get your title back with Title Max. And so here's an after. All right. So you can see the commercial buildings along the streetscape here. You've got the, second story with some residential above on the mixed-use buildings. You go back, you see the townhouses there. They've got their little garages underneath. You got the parking lots in the mid-block. But Ingalls and the Goodwill and all those things are still there in their spaces. But you can imagine, like, you'd never been so excited to go to Ingalls, right? You may actually, I'm going to go to Ingles. Well, actually, before I go to Ingles, because I'm going to get stuff that needs to be refrigerated, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee at the little coffee shop, and I'm going to sit in the new green space out there by the fountain and hang out. So anyway, suburban retrofit, right? So this is an idea for suburban retrofit. Could be less dense than this, could be more dense than this, ultimately, however we figure out how to do the zoning together. But the idea is that most people have never in their wildest dreams imagined an Ingles parking lot transforming into something that's like a real place. So, next. So downtown gateway, right? I said stay away from downtown. Don't focus too much on it, but we couldn't resist. So we didn't get in the heart of downtown. We just stayed at the edge. So this is Walgreens and the tire store. People mentioned the tire store a few times, right? Okay, so we took some liberties, and this is one of those things where you say, okay, not even a proposal. Let's say if they had done things differently, right? This is an alternate reality. Somebody could have done something different with Walgreens in a different way, done something different with the tire center. Next. So the Walgreens has been pulled up to the corner. Instead of having its parking all around it and here and there, it's now in the back, right? And you got the drive-through still on the side, and it loops around. And then we've added a couple of small little buildings there to infill, to keep the the parking kind of so it's not hanging out there for everybody to see. We've got a plaza there at the corner of Walgreens. We've got a little pocket park between Walgreens and the little that little fake ice cream store y'all had? We've brought it back, but it now is real, right? So this is a little ice cream shop there. And then on the other side of the street is the tire center in a mixed-use building. That sounds crazy, I know. Like, if I hadn't seen it with my own two eyes, I wouldn't believe it. Next slide. So, this is what it looks like today, right? This is welcome to downtown. It's pretty typical. Actually, on the way into our grand downtown in Franklin, Tennessee, you have to drive down the road that takes you right into the roundabout in the middle of the heart of our downtown, and it looks about like this for most of it until you get down there. So, next. So there you go. So now the Walgreens has been pulled up. We've even got their little awning and their chamfered corner that they've got there in the little Walgreens plaza. And then you can see over on the other side of the street there is the tire center in a mixed-use building. So we've got maybe the tire center owner can live above his shop now, or maybe one of his workers lives up there. Then down the street there a little bit with the pitched roof, we've actually shown the idea of doing an addition on the one-story building with the cool stained glass window, transom window above the storefront, the one with the different colors in there. I just picked that one because I thought it was a cool building, and so we just threw something on there to show how you could add on to it. Because the one of the things that I like to do is when you do some retrofit and you're trying to keep an existing building, is really just try to make it fit in, with the vibe of it, so you don't even really notice that something happened. So. And then, most of the images you'll see, you notice they're pitched roofs on a lot of the buildings, even the mixed-use buildings. The reason that we do that, even though it adds a little bit of height to it, it adds more sort of like small town charm kind of a feel than a flat roof. Not that you can't ever have flat roofs, because we have a mix of it, but I find that, when people say we want small town charm, the more sort of pitched roofs you can put in there, even if it does add to the height, the kind of more small towny it feels. So, so anyway, next. Oh shoot! Oh man, Anna's laughing because one of the things we didn't get in that we did in those last 3 hours was there were these. When I said I haven't seen it with my own two eyes, in Carmel, Indiana, they have a tire store in a mixed-use building on this roundabout they made, and it is beautiful. And there's like a few other stores in there. There's a nail place or whatever. It's so nice, and I had pictures of it in here, so y'all would believe that it's possible. So Google it sometimes. It's called Joe's Auto Service. And the thing is, on the back side of the building, it's all the garage bays where they pull in. And it's so cool what they did. So, next. All right, so Twin Lakes. So Twin Lakes, you may be familiar with Twin Lakes, right? I hear that it came forward and had a plan, and they proposed something, and I can't remember the story, but there was some story that went along with it. But anyway, we were looking, and we said, you know what, that site's kind of interesting because it's a pretty decent sized site. I can't remember, is it 20-something acres, 27 acres, I think, which is pretty big for here. Y'all are built out, we here. But I looked at the plan that had been submitted, and it was just basically like all townhouses all the time, except for there's a crust of single-family houses on the two exterior roads. And I thought, well, I think we could show them a different way to do it. And so we did a plan. Are y'all familiar where this is? Can somebody tell me the road? Okay, everybody knows Twin Lakes. Next. So here's a plan. Can you zoom in, Anna? There we go. So up along the road there at the top, is that 78? 78? Made a little mixed-use center, right? Because that's a commercial. Actually, the whole property right now is, I think, zoned commercial. And so there have this really cool little destination. There's a commercial building up at the front left. There's some other commercial buildings that look like houses that have been converted on the right. There's some live work in the blue with the people living, the shop owner living above. You got this great neighborhood green space and a plaza out in the front of it all. Then there's the townhouses, so you kind of transition. And then the purple building is one of those sixplex buildings, so a little multifamily a mansion flat. And then as you transition, now you're hitting single family houses, and these are decently sized lots, and they're facing onto that lake. Because one of the things that I saw in that plan was, well, it was hard to tell what was the front and what was the back of the townhouses in the first place, because they're all garage fronting. But when I figured it out, I think the lake was in the back of the townhouses, which means you feel like a creeper if you go back there and you hang out at the lake. You're like, am I in their backyard? And so what we like to do is actually make the lakes, ponds, those kind of things that you have feel like a civic amenity, and they're part of a park and whatever. And so you face onto them, like the building looks at it, right? So these houses are actually facing onto the lake, and the ones that are right where her hand is there don't even have a road in front of them, just a pathway. So they have a rear lane, a rear alley in the back, so you access the garage from there. And then the road comes around, and you cross over between the lakes, coming down to the south. Keep going. Now you hit some more single family houses. And so they are on this bottom side defining the other side of this park. And they're facing the lake again. And these are bigger houses as well, bigger lots. And then as you kind of come around, and there's this neighborhood green space, this park in the middle. And they had a space that was in theirs as well, and so kind of picked up on that, but made it more sort of obvious neighborhood gathering area with buildings facing onto it. So we have some townhouses in the orange. There's another one of those sixplex buildings there, and then single family small cottages around it. And then as you move one block out, they get bigger along the road there. And then on the far right, they're really good sized lots. And then this sort of premium ultra $1 million estate there at the end. Imagine your view down the lake, sitting on your porch there. You're like the king and queen there. So zoning related to this, right? One I mentioned earlier, the most interesting developments, even if they're fully single family, are the ones that have a multitude of different sizes and types of buildings within them. And so what you see here is we've added some density with some of these, smaller units, the attached units and the mansion flats. I think ultimately we ended up being 17 units short of what they had in their original proposal, but we also got all of the commercial space on the ground floor of the live works and the commercial buildings, and we got these great civic spaces. We got this park network that kind of works out together and everything. So we tried to make it as apples to apples, so it's like a feasible proposal that somebody might actually do. And now you've gotten a place that is distinct, is unique. You've got a new neighborhood center with the mixed use area. You've got a gathering space there. You've got now connectivity between these two roads because the roads connect. And then you'll notice that I've actually stubbed roads in to the adjacent properties there to the left, and you could also go to the right. because ultimately you've got your sort of phantom subdivision there off the main road with all the pipes sticking up out of it, your pipe farm. That could tie right into this, and this could all be a, sort of a cohesive and holistic development. Somebody was well thought out and could revive that thing that's been sitting there growing weeds around the pipes for a long time. So, anyway, we've got a couple of renderings of what this could look like. So this is that little neighborhood center, 78 here is in the foreground. And one of the things here in the park in the middle there, we're showing actually how to deal with stormwater in a beautiful way. So this is a stormwater park. The water would gather there and could be treated. And then you got your plaza, you got your mixed use buildings, you got, looks like a house there on the left that's been converted into commercial. And then transitioning to your townhouses, and then the parking in the rear, and then just behind the townhouses, you can see the roofs of the single-family houses that are facing onto the pond there. Next. And then this is the other end. So this is the view looking. These are the large estate homes, depending on your perspective, right? In relative terms, these are the estate homes. Detached single-family houses. This is another area. They had a stormwater detention area behind some houses, so we said, let's flip-flop it and feature it and make it into something nice instead of just a place for weeds and trash to gather. And so now the houses are facing onto these trails and pathways and gazebos, and then there's the proper lake in the background, the original existing lake. And then you can see at the top left, there's that neighborhood park, that big green space. The houses are facing onto it. You got your townhouses, your small cottages. But you can start to see how it all can work together if there's sort of a cohesive concept, materiality. You start looking at it all together, and it's not, like you see so often subdivision. It's like, okay, well, you'd say, well, the subdivision is all these size houses, and that's 20 acres of that, and then there's another one over here that's 5 acres of all these townhouses, and then so here we put it all together in a way that none of it seems like too much. You don't notice it nearly as much, and so you're able to start to tackle some of those goals in your comprehensive plan that talk about providing that missing middle, that talk about addressing your housing shortage, et cetera, but also address the comment about concerns for large multifamily suburban apartments and density and those kind of things. So we want to, I know a lot of the images that I've just shown are more dense, right? Because what the single family detached looks like. So, for us to go and draw a bunch of pictures of what that looks like, or to say the Ingalls parking lot could transform into all single family detached houses, that financially isn't a viable strategy for a developer to do. And so what we're trying to do is show you guys this, but I really felt like this image was important because I've heard you loud and clear, many of you, that large single family homes that are expensive or nice or whatever, adjective you want to use. And, this image to me is pretty spot on. It may not be as big of lots as y'all were thinking about, or, I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute. Next. Next. Oh, and here's sort of a residential street that could look like with these houses. So you got your porch, your little front setback, you got your sidewalks, you got trees preserved, right? We've talked about the tree ordinance, right? And so we're figuring out what to make of that, how to resurrect and bring those ideas forward. Besides the no large multifamily apartment complexes, the other thing you all have come to consensus on, hallelujah, is you don't want properties to be clear cut for development, right? I've not heard anybody have a vote for that. So you'll notice I should have been pointing out in all these images the idea of protecting and preserving trees, having a percentage of the trees to remain on the site, and then also adding trees, right? So here you'll see there's street trees. Some of these are obviously existing, like the giant pine tree. Many people use pine trees for street trees, but others of these, are intended to be shown as this is a new street tree that's been planted as a part of this development that adds to our canopy, that adds to the pedestrian comfort and walkability. These sidewalks, you'll see, we've got them on both sides of the street. The one on this right-hand side, it's hard to see because of the little picket fence. But kind of these are some of the things that we've been talking about. Y'all saying, let's raise the standards and expectations so that we get better, nicer development and not maybe such a pace of development that we've been getting. Next. Okay, so everybody, get ready. This will be the most interesting, to some of you, part of the presentation, and the most boring part too. I've just shown you all the pretty pictures. Now I'm about to show you nothing but words. Okay, and don't feel like you have to take notes on this, because this will all be posted and you can study it later. This is almost as fraught for me to share with you as the plans, because in some ways, in every way, this is the most important part of what we're doing. These are the things that people are interested so much in. So some of the character districts that we've been looking at, CD3L, suburban large lot. Next. CD3, neighborhood residential, and CD stands for character district, right? And you'll understand what these mean in a minute. I want you to have a visual of what they mean before I explain how they relate to your existing zoning. So next. CD4, neighborhood center, and sometimes, this is a commercial and mixed-use portion of a CD4, but you also in CD4 would see townhouses and some of those mansion flats and things. It's the most sort of varied character district, in some ways the most interesting. So that's kind of what that could look like. CD4C, we talked about this. This is that corridor where you're transforming and you've got, sort of the big box behind and the charming stuff up front. So you can imagine this would be in the Ingalls, some of those buildings out by the street at Ingalls or something, next. And then your character district 5, urban center, we should put that in quotes, urban center. And maybe we'll call it the Loganville Center or something, or downtown, whatever. This will be hard for you guys to accomplish because your sidewalks are about this wide. But there are things you can do. I was looking at it right now. Do you have on-street parking on your main street there?
We do.
Like, it's allowed? Okay, good. All right. Because if it weren't, I was thinking those are really wide lanes you've got, so there may be some room for sidewalks that they get wider. But so, do people use the on-street parking? Okay. Right. So anyway, it'd be great to find a way to. What's your version of this? How do you make a place where it's this lovely to be? Y'all have done so good getting your little cafe tables and stuff out there, and people. I see people trying all out the great paint colors and newly painted things. Thank you, TV shows, and so how do we make sure we're protecting that? Because some of these things, most of these things we've been talking about are transformational, but in the heart, in your downtown, it's about protecting and preserving and keeping that going. But maybe there's also some transforming, because your downtown is geographically decent size, but what people perceive as your main street is quite small, and so trying to figure out as you expand and have things down there, what's the right amount, as we say, what's big enough, how do we right size what you want to do? So next. And then your civic district, so parks and things like that, like there's neighborhood parks that I showed you, and these would be a civic district. They have their own little zoning district, and your civic buildings and things go in there. Next. Okay, next. All right, so this is the part. This is the part with all the words, and I'm going to read them, okay? So get ready. So, single family, rural residential, R44, the existing areas that are this district will remain that zoning district, right? So if you're in that already, you're not being changed, right? Okay, so you'll hear that existing to remain continue throughout. But it's not available for future rezoning. So if somebody comes in and they go, I want to rezone, they can't go pick up the old one, because we have new character districts that have all the bells and whistles and all the good stuff and all the things that people have been talking about to make it extra charming and have those increased standards. So for new, it would be replaced with CD3L, so that large lot CD3. So the R22, existing to remain, not available for future rezonings, would be replaced by CD3L as well. R16, existing to remain, not available for future, replaced by CD3. Then we've got RM4, So that would just be replaced with, so existing wouldn't remain, right? And so what that would mean is if somebody were to do something to, they want to improve it a certain amount or whatever, it's got to now become the new thing, right? You got to change it to the thing, this new preferred thing. So you've got CD4 and CD4C. And then the RM6, same thing, replaced by CD4 and CD4C. RM8, existing to remain, not available for future rezoning. And then the manufactured home park district, existing to remain. I don't know legally if we can do anything with that. There's some fair housing laws about that kind of stuff. So we haven't said it's not available for future. But if that's your desire and it's legal, then we can do that too. So next. Commercial districts, the commercial neighborhood, CN is replaced by CD4. Commercial highway replaced by CD4 and CD4C. Office institutional replaced by CD4. Commercial business district replaced by CD4 and CD5. Next. And then other districts, the light industrial existing to remain, heavy industrial existing to remain, and then PUV existing to remain but not available for future rezoning, and will be replaced by CD3 and CD4. So people aren't going to be coming in saying, hey, we've got this big idea, we want to do a PUV, and kind of bargain, right? And so you go, go use these districts, make a great place with it, knock yourself out, but you've now got standards instead of subjective. Next. So, webpage, you can always go on there, put new ideas that, I'm sure I'm giving you a lot to think about right now. So go post ideas, stay tuned on, upcoming events and things. We are here. The next step will be to draft the first draft of the ordinance that we're going to then give to staff. The plan is for them to look at it, give us, some light feedback to make sure we haven't done anything crazy. And then the public draft will come out and then have a review period where everybody can review it, give comments to staff. They consolidate the comments, give us edits. We go then take those edits, make the final draft, and then it's ready for adoption for you guys to go through your normal process. So that's the beginning of your normal process. And so for those of you who have come throughout the past week and gone like, well, how do you not know this? Or how do you not know? Or, well, you don't have an answer for this. Or what are we going to do on this? I don't know yet. What do you want to do? This is the beginning of a year-long process. And so this kind of maps it out. So stay involved as we go through, but don't be frustrated as we are figuring it all out together. So I'm going to stop yapping and thank you for your patience and waiting on us to start and for me to go through all those slides. And let's talk. Who wants to go first? Hopes, dreams, fears, aspirations, concerns. What do we get right? What do we miss? We got mics. We're going to run around so we catch it on for all the people at home online. Yeah?
Sorry, I was trying to say don't go far, but I thought somebody might. Okay, so I'm confused to like a large degree.
Okay.
So the CD3, the CD, I don't know, I was looking at the key. So it seemed to be, right, like mainly CD3, CD4 on the, instead of this thing, we're going to have, right? Is that what was, am I
You
wrong?
mean based on what it becomes and
Yes,
the future?
thank you.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay, so CD3 is, I'm thinking out loud here.
Yeah, sure. So it's like the larger lot, setback,
So that's
buildings,
like
you
the
know.
Ingalls parking lot example?
No, that'd be
No.
CD4 or CD4C. Residential. Yeah, single family residential will be CD3.
Okay, so I guess where I'm,
Higher the number, the what?
Oh yeah, so the higher the number, the less single family exclusively that it is. But CD4 also has single family. They just tend to be smaller lots, closer setbacks. They have detached single family and attached single family in it as well. But the CD3 is the larger lot, larger setback, and the CD3L is even larger lot.
so I think that's where I know that's where I'm going, is all of those pictures, and I understand this isn't like in stone and this is what we're gonna do. It was high density. I, for one, everybody knows where I stand. I'm not for any of that. I'm just one person, I get it. But, so as we are now, we have, and I know you talked about, like, it doesn't make sense to do X amount of, X amount of homes on an acre because of the lot size and stuff. But does this give any type of measurement, parameters of how many multifamily mixed use could be per acre? Am I making sense?
Yeah. So typically the way that the zoning, the character districts will be set up is that they'll have lot widths and building heights, those sorts of things. And you end up with the parking requirements. And so when you start putting those all in and using them to create a plan, the plan yields a certain result, right? And so ultimately, those become the limiting factors on what you can do. So for instance, if somebody said, you know what, I've got an idea, I want to make 10 square foot, units in my mixed use building, it would never sell, right? And so there's some market forces that come into play, but typically we don't have like a number of units per acre. So if you go like, okay, well, we don't feel like character-wise, because that's what we can understand and perceive, that more than 2 stories makes sense character-wise, then that becomes a limiting factor. If you said, okay, well, we feel like 4 stories make sense, then obviously you can do more in 4 than you can do in 3, but it's not infinite, right? Because you guys don't have property values here that would warrant doing a structured parking, for instance, right? And so you couldn't do 4 stories and still park it. And so a lot of times we were like, we need a number of units per acre, that's going to protect us. And and then you go, well, how did you pick that number? Well, I don't know. It's lower than some other number, so I picked that number. So as we go through this, you'll start to get a sense, when a draft comes out, like, okay, well, here are the metrics, and now I can start to figure out how intense it can be. Now, that said, I should have said this at the beginning, what we're talking about is what's left, right, in town, right, which isn't much. And we're also talking about, like, what I just showed in that Ingalls parking lot. If you look at your growth trend, it probably represents about 12 years of growth here, right? And so even if somebody decides that they want to redevelop in the Ingalls parking lot, you'll be lucky if maybe they do the part around the little town green and as a phase 1, so you get this nice little streetscape, and then the rest of it's going to say parking, and and then on and on. And so that's one of the tricky things about showing some of these plans is, I sometimes joke, I say, well, if you tally it all up, we've shown the 100-year plan for Loganville, right? But when I show it, people are like, oh my God, what if somebody comes in next week and gets that approved and they're going to start building, it's going to be here tomorrow. And so it's a long-term endeavor, especially in a place like this.
So my other question, I feel like I know the answer to this, is it's not striking me as if council has said, like, yeah, this is what we, like, in my mind, I'm like, is this the suggestion that goes to council and you guys vote on it?
No, these things that I've just shown you
Yeah.
are just pictures.
No, I mean,
The zoning will be,
zoning.
yes, that will be voted on, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's what I was saying. All the stuff we're doing for the next year gets you up to the point at which y'all are then, you go through your normal process. You have hearings, you have a vote on it, you give public comment on it, all of that stuff, right? And so this is to get kind of go through this to take y'all's temperature but council has, to answer your question about council, they haven't commented council hasn't commented on this except for insofar as they've been involved in this process and just given input. So this is the first time anybody's seen this, including planning staff. Like, y'all all saw this together for the first time. And so it's kind of fun. Yeah. Yes, sir. Oh, wait, sorry. Ron? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, what I've seen tonight is very impressive, looks really good, a lot of the drawings and stuff, and I see a lot of infill. From a historical standpoint, when all this started, the city put in a ban on zoning or building right now, a moratorium.
Yes.
Until we reached out to a group to rewrite all our zoning laws. And from what I'm seeing from here, are you going to completely rewrite all our zoning laws from R4 all the way through RM4 all the way through RM44? Because what I'm noticing here is you're grandfathering parts of it, you're replacing it with these character districts,
Yeah.
but within the character districts, you're showing 5 different zoning regulations in one area. So how do you address that? And if you're not rewriting the entire zoning laws, you can't, how do you go to a NW and put in a R4 commercial, R22, R16 that you've shown there at Twin Lakes that has multiple districts or
Yeah.
zones, but you don't have a zoning regulation to address that? So are you going to rewrite all our zoning laws?
Yeah, so we are working on the whole zoning ordinance. Some of the things, though, that the districts that we've said will remain but won't be available for future use, they'll stay as they are, right? Because that's your neighborhood you already live in. Nobody's trying to change that, right? There are some things like, you know, this ordinance is enabled by state statute, so-and-so, 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 that will be 100% exactly the same in the old code and in the new code, right? There's certain things that don't make sense to change, right? And so what we're doing is creating new standards for these character districts, but we're cleaning up the old standards as well and bringing forward the things that make sense. Some of these zoning districts can go away, et cetera. But to your point about how do you do what I showed at Twin Lakes, right? So Anna, can you pull that back up? One of the other slides that evaporated was what we called the regulating plan. So a developer would come in with a submittal as they had done, except for it would be a bit different. You know, they had, on the plan that we saw, they had shown their building footprints for all their units. What we would do is the first thing they would submit is their zoning. And so in the upper area where, yeah, right there, so we would have all the way up until the single family lots, that would be zoned CD4. Then the single family area would transition to CD3, and it would continue across the lake. And then when you come to the neighborhood green space where you have the row houses, the small cottages, and the mansion flat, that would be CD4 also, and then you'd have CD3 around it.
So you would be adding back R16 because it's not there now? So you'd be creating that zoning again?
No,
Then
not
how will you-
R16.
You've got R16 listed up there as not changing, but you're using the CD.
It's inactive. Right now it's inactive. It's not gone. It's still in the ordinance. It's just unavailable.
Well, at the last meeting we had, they said that it was gone. Then that if you can't use, we couldn't use it before the moratorium, then it was gone. So how do you reestablish that?
No, I'm just saying it's physically not gone. It's still there. It just simply says this district is inactive and not available
Oh,
in the
okay,
future.
because with the meetings we had prior to that, they said it wasn't.
Shorthand, you could say it's gone, I suppose, you know, but it hasn't actually been deleted. Well, and if anyone here has it all figured out after the 15-minute well, probably longer than that, about zoning and showing all these plans, then I'm going to give you all the mic and y'all are going to do the next presentation because you are zoning masters. So we're figuring, literally, this stuff that you see right here, like remember, we started on Monday, so this is Monday night, so we had 3 days of work, and now we're presenting this stuff to you. So we're figuring it out too. So don't feel like if you're confused by it, that it doesn't make any sense. Here's what I always say too, right? No, I know you're not, but sometimes people are like, I don't understand, therefore it's, you know, it doesn't make sense. But I'm just saying there's a learning curve when you do something new. But I always tell people this when they start thinking about zoning, say, okay, and sometimes I actually do it. I give them a pop quiz. And inevitably, planning commission, city council members, and of course the staff, the citizens, even staff sometimes, they all fail the pop quiz on the existing zoning ordinance because no one knows it either, right? You know the things you don't like about it. You know the developments that you didn't like that happen to have some combination of letters and numbers associated with them. But the ins and outs of it, most people don't understand even the existing one. So, but that's part of the process. We'll go through this and we'll figure it out. We may come back and go like, oh yeah, you know how we said we weren't going to, have that one available anymore. That didn't make sense. Or, oh, we called that was going to become CD 3 and 4. Well, actually it just needs to be 3 or whatever. So it's a work in progress. Yes, ma'am.
So help me understand again, the part says we're not available for future rezonings.
Yes.
So I see an R22 existing remains not available for rezone. So it's replaced by CD3L. Can CD3L be rezoned?
You can use CD3L in a rezoning, is the
Okay.
idea, right?
But the
So-
existing will stay as is.
Exactly.
Period, end of story.
Yeah, the closest equivalent to it is what we're saying is CD3L, right? So I know we struggled. Before we had change to, and then we're like, no, that's confusing. And even still, what we came up with is not super clear yet. But we were trying to tie it to, somebody gave us an idea like, how do you tie it to the old zoning so that people can understand better what the new zoning would be, so.
And are we going to dive down into the minutia? Something you and I talked about is sitting up here doing these cases, writing conditions and tying conditions to these rezones and annexations. Trying to eliminate, in my mind, street parking. Why does that happen? Because we allow driveways to be built that won't accommodate two vehicles side by side or front to back. And I can just go on and on about the conditions and things that we need to fix in our ordinances. Is all that going to be fixed in this? Are we going to have better cladding, better
Materials, things
yes,
like that? Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, we're still figuring out what you can and can't do in Georgia based on that, and so like I said, I mentioned this the other day, in some states you're not able to discriminate against one material versus another. Next thing you know, the vinyl manufacturers of America have this class action lawsuit and whatever, and it's crazy to me. So far, it looks like y'all have the ability to be a bit more prescriptive in that way. So we hope that's true. But one thing I will say is, you guys, more than maybe a lot of other communities we worked in, have identified problems, but you've also come up with the solutions you think need to be, how to address those problems. So one thing that I would say is the problems that you've identified to us can all be solved, but it may be that we solve them in a different way than y'all have currently thought about solving them. And so we'll have to work that out together, because some of the solutions that I've heard are in direct conflict with some of the other goals that we've talked about and that are in the comp plan, and for walkability and so the placemaking and some of those things. So they've solved one problem, but they've caused another one. But when you're in the moment, it made perfect sense, and the problem you solved was probably more important than it was worse than the one that you created. Not you, I just mean in general, y'all. And when I say problem, it's more so like, again, that placemaking and the character and those kind of things. So we need to work through those, but yeah, our intent is to address the things that we can. But like I said, a lot of the things that y'all have talked to us about aren't things that are zoning related. They're just not. And so we're going to go through, kind of walk through with y'all and help everybody make sure y'all understand what is zoning and what isn't.
So if we have a neighborhood and we want them to have a dog park,
Yeah.
are we going to define what's a dog park? Is it just a fence, or are we going to require a piece of dog equipment, a pet waste station, and a pet fountain?
You can. That's most places aren't that prescriptive, but you can require things like that. Typically what you'd see is you'd say, okay, well, you have to have a certain amount of this, civic zone within a property, and a certain amount of open space, and within this district or that district, these types of civic spaces are appropriate. Dog park may be one of them, and then somebody can pick they want to do that. So if you're talking about an existing area where you'd like to have a dog park, that's a different thing. A lot of times that's a city project. But my question would be, and we won't have to go through it now, but my question would be, how do you decide whether or not this developer needs a dog park in that project as opposed to that other project over there didn't need a dog park? And so a lot of times the dog park would be an amenity that the developer was like, oh yeah, our buyers would love that. We're going to put in a dog park because we know we have to have some civic space, and our civic space just can't be whatever crummy stuff was left over in the back that we couldn't build on or whatever. And you can do a dog park, and you're going to have a little doggy water fountain, or you can do a regular park and you have to have a little human water fountain or whatever. You know what I mean? So they can pick and.
What about site-specific plans? Because a lot of our issues are that the builder comes and says, we're going to build this, and then what we see come out of the ground is that. It's not what they said. So
Yes.
Are we going to be specific plans.
Yes, yes. So,
Thank you.
and we've heard about that, the stories we've heard, if they're all 100% accurate, would not be what would happen once the new zoning is in place. It's, they submit a plan, the plan follows the rules. Now, that said, here's the thing that's a little bit tricky, right? In places that are used to negotiating and kind of figuring it out on the fly, sometimes you go like, well, I really wanted them to do a dog park this time. I hear all these people like dog parks, and I really wanted them to do one. Well, dang it, they're following the ordinance, and it says they just have to have a civic space, and they picked a community garden instead. So you got to be ready to not micromanage and plan the project for them, but on the other hand, you're going to get awesome stuff, and it's all the other things that you've had to beat them up about, you're not going to have to do, so.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we tell them they have to have a dog park,
Yeah.
but if they come and say, we'd like to put a dog park in, I'd like for them to know what our expectations of a dog park is.
Yes, you got it.
Without us having to sit up here and go through the
Perfect.
names and tie conditions to everything.
Yeah.
And we hope it's,
Yeah, yeah, like, what do you mean dog park? And,
and dog park's just an example.
yes,
You could have, if you had a dog park as a civic space, you could have provisions that say there's going to be a watering station, there's got to be fencing, watering station, fencing, there would be things that would be required to make it a dog park, so.
And just like if they wanted to put a swimming pool in, it's gonna be tied to a clubhouse, it's got to have landscaped and, all these things spelled out.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one where it has existing R44, not available for future rezonings in a CD3L. What is a CD3L again?
That's the larger lot version of CD3. Single family
So
residential
if
site.
you does that also depend on where that R44 is located?
Well, we'll have a new zoning map, and then, but for a rezoning, yeah, I mean, in that case, your comprehensive plan is, you kind of look at the comprehensive plan and say, what's the intention there?
So if
right?
you have a current undeveloped R44 that you're
Yes.
looking to rezone,
Yes,
it would possibly be stuck in the CD3L?
Not in it, but adjacent.
that's what it says
Okay,
there.
I'll just be specific. I have an
Yeah, I know.
R44
Yes,
in
yes.
downtown Loganville that we're
Yes.
looking to rezone. And I don't want to necessarily be
Correct.
stuck in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, the way it's written, I would be stuck into large lot, single family.
That is correct. And to your point, where it is located
Right.
is relevant to the discussion. So when we're going through and putting colors on the map for the character districts,
Right,
we'll be looking at, like we did in Charleston, like, well, what is that zoning there? Why is that there now? If it's an equivalent to a large lot, suburban, single-family lot, but it's in downtown, that seems,
Out of place.
peculiar. And so we have to kind of figure it out. However, if it allows for a, 600-unit multifamily thing, but to your point before, with what do you have, 10 acres, and you've got parking requirements, and you'll have height requirements, and da-da-da-da, whatever, like, there's only so many units you can feasibly fit in a certain given area,
well, I
especially.
wouldn't want that high density
No,
myself.
I know, I just
But,
picked that number.
I don't, also, there's not many of those type of properties in that center
Yes.
area.
Yep.
So the thought of that just now continue to stay at roughly an R44 and not having any development possibilities is,
Yeah.
a concern as
Yeah.
well.
So I think the way to think about it would be, it wouldn't, I'm not saying this is the case, or I'm not promising this, so don't get, but when, like we're cleaning up the words of the zoning ordinance, if we were to clean up the zoning map first, and then apply this rubric to it, then you might say like, oh, well, that might not be R44 as the starting point, and then you would go from there. So, but I don't know. I know generally where your property is, but I don't know the specifics of it, so I'll have to think through it. But it seems like having the largest lot, single-family homes in a zoning district in the midst of the downtown, but if you're trying to invigorate your downtown and all of that stuff, it may not be the place for those largest lot, single-family homes. But I don't know, maybe it is. So, Who's next?
There are a couple of R44 parcels in the downtown area, which are, it's unusual. It says R44 is described as being in a rural area in the first place. And maybe it was, maybe it was. The 3L is the closest replacement. Most people kind of want the closest replacement, but other people, I mean, that particular parcel, I don't know which of the few that is yours, but that particular parcel may be way better for a 4 than it is a 3 that would have a lot more, development possibilities.
So with that being said, though it's already zoned R44, the developer could come in and request the CD4. It wouldn't be stuck to just being a CD3 or 3L.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, they could, just like you can now, they'd come and ask for a rezoning.
Right.
Y'all could
Okay,
decide
so
if you
the
want.
possibility is there if it's approved.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they could come and ask for a CD5 if they wanted to, but you still have your normal rezoning process.
Okay, so my question is coming from a city council perspective. So when we started this process, we were told certain things about what this process would be. And then we decided whether we would want to go through with that or not. But now, I'm not going to say who, but we were told multiple times that if this is adopted and it's put in place, that council would rarely see a rezoning case because everybody would already know what they could do with their land. But that's not necessarily the case, because she's got a piece that'll become CD3L, but she could come and ask for it to be CD4.
Yeah, well, assuming, so
we are gonna be
pause for
seeing
one second.
rezoning cases.
Pause for 1 second. So thankfully, she was here tonight, and she said what she said, and now we go like, oh yeah, we need to go look at that. And so it's likely, based on what I know of the site and what she's just said, that it wouldn't show up like that in the first draft of the zoning map. And so we're going to try to get as much of those things right. And once you've gone through this process, when a developer comes in and says, we'd like to do a rezoning, you're like, what amazing thing have you thought of that the whole rest of the town and our whole year-long code process didn't think of? Like, you're going to come with it, right? So it's but yeah, state law allows people to request rezoning.
Right, because I live on a piece of land that I think it's R44 right now. But I could sit here and go, I think I'd like to build higher density on my thing. I can still come and request
Yeah,
a
we can't-
rezoning. So
you can't
council
keep
is still
somebody
going to
from
be
doing that.
getting rezone requests. Because
Yes.
there's property out there, like the Twin Lakes Road, it is commercial right now. So they would have to come. But let me ask you this, on that Twin Lakes project, let's say somebody looks at that and goes, hey, that's a great idea. That's what, 5 different rezones that we have to do on that one parcel. Because you've got the infill, you've got the single family, you've got
No, it'd
different
be
things there.
one rezone. They would just apply multiple character districts to it, right? So they would draw on their plan that they submit. They would color code each of the lots within certain areas, CD3, CD4, civic zone, whatever, and it would just be one submission, and it's looked at together. You don't have to have just one zoning designation for the entire thing. So it
That's what I'm
allows
saying,
you to
though, but
be.
it's divided up.
It is, but it's not 3 separate processes or whatever. You just have to decide. Not even, you don't have to decide. You just have to look. So here's the thing. When they come to you with the rezoning request, does rezoning go first to planning commission?
Yes.
So planning commission, right, in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, here's what happens. Somebody has a rezoning request. It goes to staff. Staff looks at it, looks at the ordinance, says, check, 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 on to planning commission. And they either, do y'all make a recommendation, or you just say whether or not it's compliant? Okay, so you make a recommendation. So they say either we recommend you approve it or disapprove it or whatever. And it goes to planning commission. The planning commission looks at what staff's report says. They look at the thing. They go, yep, it meets the ordinance. Goes on to city council. City council goes, staff recommended it, planning commission recommended it, and we agree that it meets the ordinance. It's approved. So even if something comes to you, it can be a very brief discussion. Did they follow the rules or not? You know?
And you said a while ago, so you are or are not going to dive into architectural standards in this rewrite?
To some extent, like that's the thing. So one of the things that we know is in every city that we've worked in around the country, at the beginning, people are like, yay, architectural standards, let's be very specific and very strict. And then you give them the draft and they go, whoa, that's quite specific. How are we gonna, we're gonna really regulate, fill in the blank, whatever the thing is. Yeah, we're gonna regulate color or whatever. And you go, well, how do we decide if we like that color, or that's a good color or not? I'm colorblind actually, but I'm the voting member of the body here. And how do I know? Do I have to recuse myself, So architectural standards, yes, and I guess it depends on what you mean. And so as we go through this, and maybe even right now, I'm going to throw out a couple of things. What do you want?
Well, we had talked about, because we want to build better.
Yeah.
So we want a better quality home.
Yep.
Well, first thing we'd like to do is, we don't build on slabs anymore in this city.
Yeah. Done.
Can you put that in there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Easy enough. Finished floor elevation has to be at least 24 to 36 inches above grade.
Okay.
Done.
But like the on-street parking, how is this going to stop on-street parking?
Well, so that's one of those things where y'all have come to a conclusion about something that isn't typical best practice from a planning perspective, right? So when you go to these walkable neighborhoods, nearly without exception, they're going to have on-street parking. Now, you guys are talking about garages, driveways, et cetera, et cetera. What you'll notice is that in the Twin Lakes plan, nearly none of the houses have driveway from the street. A few of them do, and those that do, the garage is set back from behind the house, essentially. And so you don't have the issue that y'all are worried about, and the on-street parking is intended to be there to make it more pedestrian friendly.
I think we're talking about two different things when we
Yes.
say on-street parking.
Yes.
You're talking about intentional built-in.
Exactly.
plan, where I'm talking about people don't have enough room in their driveway.
The haphazard, opportunistic, halfway in their yard, yes.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, that's what we're trying to eliminate.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for saying that,
Right,
because
yeah.
I realized that the other day, actually, and I was like, I think the way to describe it is streets that weren't intended or designed to have on-street parking, where people are parking on street, that is one thing. New streets, new development, having it where it is intended and there's space for it and sometimes even marked is a different thing. So hold on one second. Yes.
Could that parking in the street issue, that can be taken care of not in zoning, but in standard ordinance, a parking ordinance that says you can't park on the street to reduce the travelable width less than 24 feet.
Yeah. So
And that's how a lot of cities do it. It's not a zoning issue,
Exactly.
rather it's an ordinance issue.
right. So we're going to solve the part of one of the reasons that the problem is there by making sure that the garages and things are in the back, right? And so they're back there. They've got the driveway to get back to it. They've got, they can go to the alley. They park back there. And then, but in existing neighborhoods and things like that, that's just an ordinance
I'm talking about in the
thing.
new one, but like, so,
Yeah.
and I asked you, and you got kind of off topic when I asked you about this.
Imagine that.
I know, right? The other day when I said, I think our roads in the new developments should be an extra lane wider to accommodate it. And you're like, oh no, because people are going to go faster. And I said, well, can you put the divided, so are we going to address that in the new?
Yes, if you meant, can you add a parking lane for on-street parking,
Yes.
then yes.
Or however you want to do it. Because
Yes.
you gave me the indication that I don't want to make your road wider so they can park over there because people are going to go faster.
No.
So I want to make sure we are going to address that in new developments, that it's not a two-lane road and everybody's
Yes.
parking. That's what,
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. So, and again, this is one of those things, and you have to forgive us sometimes too, because we do this so much, we take certain things for granted. We're like, oh, and this means this, and what I'll be very specific about it. What you don't want to do is have your travel lanes where the cars drive be wider. You want them to be as narrow as possible so that people drive slow. Then you have on-street parking lanes where you want on-street parking, and that's they're distinct from one another. But we don't want to just widen the travel lane, because people will speed and then you'll need speed humps in front of your house. So remember why I said we're not addressing speed humps, but the other things that we're doing can make it where you don't need speed humps. So, yes, who's got the magic mic? Yes.
First off, I want to say thank y'all so much for coming and putting up with all of us here. I know we're a little crazy
great.
here in Loganville.
Oh, y'all are all
I'm
on the
just
same
kidding.
page.
We're a good bunch of people. I do have one question. So if somebody does come in and ask for a rezone, our current system, and this might be fixed with an ordinance, so it might not be on y'all. I understand that. I should ask you these questions more often, Jeff. Right now, we just get, they answer questions and we get a plat, pretty much, or a site plan. Versus where I see a lot of site-specific plans come into other cities where there's actually a booklet of like, these are what they're going to look like. This is this. This is that. These are how the trees are going to look. These are the trees we're going to save. These are the trees that we're going to have to replace, stuff like that. Is that going to be addressed in the zoning, or is that something we're going to have to do in the ordinance?
Yeah. So are you guys up for real submittals? Like for requiring developers to really submit like what they're doing, not just having them be able to put on the back of a napkin and off to the races? Yeah. 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 So
We're all tired of bait and switch.
yes. All right. So what we recommend is that you have a very thorough submittal. The rezoning is specific, but you're not asking them to give you grading plans and all, engineer everything and spend a fortune before they even know if they're going to let you rezone. Hopefully we won't have many rezoning, so it won't even matter. But let's say they're not rezoning and they're just coming in and so it's a site plan approval. And the site plan, they need to have it all figured out. You need to see a plan. You need to have, architectural inspiration, or you need to have renderings. You need to have all of that kind of stuff. I mean, if you see a real submittal for a real development where somebody's not trying to hide the 8 ball and like we did a private development project one time in Nashville, because I told y'all half our clients are developers, and we submitted it, and in the city of Nashville, big city, they said it was the most thorough and best submittal they've ever seen. And for me, what I found is that if you're just straight up about what you're trying to do and you're committed to doing it, you get a lot of grace. People are like, oh, I see that they're not trying to do a bait and switch. I'm not going to throw up roadblocks where I could, make it easier or whatever. And then going through and, being specific. But in order to do that, they have to be willing to commit. But you've got to give them standards to something they're happy to commit to. We did a project in Monroe. We got the planning director here. How was that submittal, Brad? Was that a pretty good submittal for Breedlove?
Oh, yeah, that was, actually, that was submitted to the regional center. They said that was probably one of the most thorough and complete developments they've seen in the entire time they've been looking at plans.
Wow. I did not know that. Now I've got 2 testimonials from him. Nashville was a bit old. That's fresh off the press. So, so that's the thing. It's like, but you got to tell them what you want. You got to say, here's what we expect. Here's your checklist. You got to submit this and that and the other. Don't, a lot of times they'll say, you got to submit this, that, and the other, and anything else we deem necessary. And then they get run around, and because somebody didn't like something or whatever, and then they keep, well, now give us this and do a study of that. It's like, if you want to have a traffic impact study with the development of a certain size, just make that a requirement, right? Just like we were talking about with the trees, right? If you're going to do tree preservation, they need to go out and they need to survey the trees and see what they've got. Trees up to a certain size, not every single twig and branch on the ground or whatever. Trees of a certain size, and if they're going to cut them down, if you allow that, then they're going to do a replacement, and you have a calculation that says this: you cut down this many caliper inch tree, you're going to replace it with this many. Very clear, very straightforward. They know at the beginning they've got to go do. No, there's a developer. He's out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't know if he is or not, but they know that they're expected to do that. They don't get here with a plan and then have somebody go, you need. There's a lot of beautiful trees out there. I saw one the other day. There was that. I won't even say it. I don't want to pick at an old sore, but anyway, there's a beautiful tree there, and we want you to. We think you need to go survey those trees, and so they know they have to, and they show up with the tree survey, and that's what it is. So, yes, sir.
speak to it? Why don't you speak to the way that the different character districts avoid the bait and switch? Once you get the rezoning, you're then subject to.
Yeah. Yeah, so if there is a rezoning and they go through and they've submitted the plan, the regulating plan, and really, if it's done right at a rezoning, you can stop at sort of the character district level, but there has to be a specific plan. For instance, to your point, how do you put multiple character districts on one piece of property if you don't have a plan? So you'd have to have drawn a plan in order to know where they're going to be. But within the character district, it'll say, lot widths need to be between this many and that many feet wide, right, within this character district. Do you care where it is in between here and there? No. And so they're going to tell you like how many units total they're going to have because they've done a parking study or something and it's related to the number of units they've got. And so ultimately, if they
are allowed in the district certain building types.
Right, certain building types are allowed, frontage types, the lot widths and the ranges and the heights, and so all those have standards.
Into the rezoning once they get the rezoning.
Exactly, and so they're locked into that. And so when they come, after they get their rezoning, then they'll do their site plan submittal, and the site plan submittal should sync right up with exactly what they said in the rezoning. It's easy to tell.
Well, what we've run into in the past is the developers come in with a beautiful plan. We all love it. It's a great, big, beautiful plan.
Yeah.
And we all love it. And then they start breaking ground and they start going, oh, we can't do that. So they're right before the council again or planning and zoning. We need a variance. We need another variance. We need another variance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge we face. So how do these other cities that you were getting, like Monroe, how are you facing those rezone variances? Because that's what happens in a lot of these developments that we end up with. And so what is Monroe doing to address the variances that you face? Or what is Tennessee? Yeah, you submitted the best plan in the world. 6 months later, well, we really don't want to build that house. And by the way, that brick looks bad and we think this plastic vinyl look better.
Yeah.
And that's what we see here.
Yeah, have you ever played Chutes and Ladders? Right? When you hit the chute, you know what happens? Right? You go back. Yeah.
That doesn't quite answer my question. I don't get that.
I will say this, is we addressed our standards for when he rewrote our code. You can't ask for a design variance from this when he writes the code, you can't ask for a variance. It simply says you cannot ask for one because there are no Bill will answer this, is there's 99.9%, there's nothing preventing someone from meeting one of these in-front setbacks on a greenfield development. They simply, if they don't want to follow it, then they don't have to build it. They're creating their need for their own variance. In this case, we're talking about a design variance. When someone says, I can't do it, well, that's not a true variance. So in our code, we have special exception variances for things like parking or some things where there is some special need, and then there's hardship variances. To your point, I think in my city, we've had, 6 variances in the past 5 years.
Well, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. So there's different kinds of variances.
More answers my question.
Yeah, that are applicable.
Yeah. That we would still face variances anyway. That's my point.
There's going to be certain types.
Yeah.
They'll ask for a lot of variances, but if you hold to the hardship standard, and that's really the key, you hold to the hardship standard, which is under state law, there's no requirement that you give a variance. It's just not.
Right.
So.
Well, and the reason that I said what I said about Chutes and Ladders is because the way you described it was they get out there, they get their plan approved, they start building stuff, and they change their mind about something, and then they come ask you for a variance. Now, to me, a variance is when you're going through the process and you don't want to meet the rules and they ask you for a variance there. If somebody, figures out something like, let's just say a great recession happens, and they realize that they can't sell jumbo estate lots and they need to carve them up and make them smaller lots, which happened all over the country. They could only sell smaller stuff, and so they came in. They had to go and start, and they resubmitted their plan. They got the plan reapproved. But if you get out there and you find that you've got some, the world's largest geode or something, and you want to leave it and make it an amenity, and now our road was going this way, now it needs to go like this or go around it. It's probably something that you don't need to have them come up and have to stand at a podium to get permission to do. Staff could maybe say that, like, oh, you only moved it a little bit? Yeah, that's fine, So Brad said,
There are some administrative ones too. There's slight exceptions too. I mean, we have some administrative ones for setbacks and things like that. Those are the ones you want to make exceptions for, and we have a 20% administrative ones we do for those small things. But yeah, like the don't wants and the I can't do those things. Yeah, those aren't supported by staff.
Are you going there? Okay, go ahead. Well, one of the ones that we get the most is that they didn't do their own due diligence. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then they come up here and they, oh, well, we didn't know there was a creek, or, oh, there's too much rock. And I'm like, dude, like, have you even ridden through Loganville? We're nothing but rock.
Yeah.
And so, but none of this, what we're doing is going to stop any of them coming back and asking for that, though.
No, I mean, if they come and they say, we didn't do our due diligence and now we found out that, this site's not profitable because we're having to blast out the rock or whatever, okay, go make your plan that is profitable and come on back.
Well, that's what I say, and we just got to, as a council, we're going to have to get a lot stronger and unified and stand up to that, not feel, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, yeah. That's what I've said for 4
Right.
years.
Yeah, I don't wanna, and
Yeah, that is the excuse, it's
Yeah.
going to cut in.
again, I say this because half our clients are developers. Oh, it doesn't pencil. Okay, that means you didn't do the right plan, right? You got the wrong site. I mean, I've told our clients, they'll say, well, we need to get this many units on the site. And I'm like, do you have this under contract or have you purchased this? Because if you purchased it, you've made a mistake, right? And so ultimately, they need to go through the process. They need to do their homework, and that's part of being a professional developer. That's why
Correct.
they can make a lot of money and they can lose a lot of money. But, if somebody doesn't do the basic due diligence, that's on them. That's not y'all to have
That
to
is
feel
correct.
bad about.
And so that is what I'm saying.
So our existing PV up there will change over to CD something. And if I lived in a PV here, some of the businesses I want to patronize are excluded from our current PV. Are you going to change those things?
Well, can you give me an example?
If I wanted to go on a Saturday and get my hair done or go to the nail shop, I would love to do that from within inside the PUV. And I believe, I wasn't on council then, but those two are excluded.
Oh. Yeah, we'll need to look at that. Oh, yeah, the ones that are already approved are approved.
Unless you're gonna do an amendment to the PUV to have it changed. That's basically the.
But that's not covered under what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, because,
What we're writing, it'll say that, but we're not trying to change uses in PUV on the fly here. It just.
but I'll say this, right? So sometimes a developer, owner, or whatever goes, it was such a headache getting through the process. We've been approved. I am not going back to talk to them. And so we've actually had some cities where before they got to know us and learned some things, they thought they didn't want any residential above their X, Y, and Z, right? And then they got this cool the Publix one I was showing you. Initially they thought they didn't want to have any residential on that site, and then they saw what it could be. And the developer was like, I am not going back and asking. And so I talked to the city and I was like, you guys, why don't y'all just amend it on their behalf if they want you to? So the city went through and amended the PUD for that project to allow them to do residential above. Didn't take any time for the applicant, didn't cost anything for them to do it. And so if there's some of those things that you guys want to do, that somebody thought was a good idea, you want to facilitate that we'll need to look at what those things are, those 15.
And we've had developers who come on a PUV and say, they want to talk all about residential, and yeah, we're going to put some commercial in. So we start asking, who's going to develop your commercial? They have no clue. There's obviously no plan for the commercial. It's all done by the fly.
Yeah.
On the fly.
The approach Brian just spoke to it'd be difficult if you've already sold a bunch of property in the PUV, because like everybody in there is subject to covenants and restrictions, and they've all agreed to those, and that's okay with, and so you end up having to get your HOA involved and take a vote, and do you get enough under the HOA documents to change the uses, all that stuff. It'd be a real challenge.
It's possible,
Yeah.
but it's a feat.
Depends on how old the PUV is and how many people are there, all that.
Yeah. What did you say just before he said that? right before he said that last bit.
The commercial, there was actually a homestead plan.
Yes, that, thank you, yes, there we go, yes. Yes, so we see that a lot, and when cities have caught on, that they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have higher standards, we want mixed use in some areas, whatever, and then developers are like, okay, sure, and then they're like, we're gonna do the residential part, and we'll just reserve some little spot over here for commercial one day, someday, kind of, sort of. Well, there are things that you can do where you can require a certain percentage of it to be commercial, or you could even go so far as to say, like, if you do a development agreement with them or whatever, you can say, before you can build any more residential, you have to do that.
We do something along those lines, however, they come back and say, we want to.
Well, they asked for a
Yeah,
variance. They
that's
said they
y'all.
couldn't do it.
Nope, that's not a zoning ordinance problem. That's a holding the line, hold the line. So, all right, what else? Anybody? I always say we'll stand here until y'all quit asking questions, but. Good.
While I got the mic, I just want to echo what Brandon said. Thank you so much for everything y'all done and meeting with everybody y'all have met with. I hope that even there was some people that were able to put their comments through online
Yes.
that couldn't attend. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you said that. So somebody actually asked me today. They came in talking to us, and we're just kind of it was their first time. They just dropped in the studio. So we were talking about what all we've been talking about and whatever, and she said this whole idea about these mansion flats. I love it. Sign me up. I'll build the first. I'll buy them. I'll move into it, and I'll have tenants, and I'll do whatever. She was all about it. So she's like, make sure. Well, I said, still a little bit nervous about doing the multifamily stuff here, So if you want to, you may want to come and let people know that. She said, well, if I can't come, just tell them I said that. So anyway, they do exist. All right. Well, thank you all so much for all your time this week, and hopefully it's been helpful to you, and hopefully you feel like we've been listening, and we'll get going on the draft, and stay tuned for opportunities to give more input. Thanks.